Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And for this session of the Fireside Chat, we have Mr. Joseph Wong. Now, Mr. Joseph Wong is a person whom is not usually seen in the forefront if you are not going to a lot of developer show offices or going to attend developer launches. But Joseph has been in the industry and writing about the property and the property market for quite some time. He's an experienced senior writer and editor with a demonstrated history of working in the newspaper industry, skill in marketing management, content management, public relations, content marketing, and also content strategy. He's got a strong media and communications background and is a professional with a Bachelor of Applied Finance, focusing in finance and financial management services, graduate from the University of Southern Queensland. He is presently the content manager at StarProperty Sdn Bhd. Hi, Joseph. Welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. I hope everything is good.
Well, everything hopefully is good. I'll cross my fingers, toes, and eyes. And as you know, the property market post this moratorium period, we are expecting some choppy and some turbulence. But we're also hoping that there's also light at the end of the tunnel. And our topic for today is where you see the property market ending in Q4 2020 and where do you see it headed for 2021. And why we're so excited to have a chat with you today, Joseph, is because of your deep connections and your deep relationships with so many parties within the real estate industry that I'm sure you have some sort of insights that can help our listeners and our viewers to get better information to make better financial decisions. So right off the bat, right off the bat, Joseph, how's the property market for Q4 2020 in your opinion?
Well, I see that it's a bit depressed. It will continue to be depressed for Q4 because we have just gotten off the moratorium for the banks. So now we are monitoring to see how the market reacts. From what we can find so far is that we're expecting a number of people who will be letting go of their properties. So highly likely you will see auction properties increase. Even for this year also, we found something interesting is that for the auction property, in the past when they used auction, you see a discount of about 10%, 20%, but now you see as high as 30%. And then there's also developers who are beginning to offer more discounts to attract more buyers. And from what we can see is that when we look at the NAPIC figures for Q1, the results were actually still quite okay. There was a drop in both the transaction value as well as the transaction volume. But for the first half of the first half of the year, we find that the total amount of property transaction and property value that has dropped, and it's quite a drop from what we can see. NAPIC normally gives the figure for Q2, but this time around they only provided for the first half. So to get the Q2 result, you have to deduct the Q1 results from the first half. Then you get a clearer picture. So from what we can see from the second quarter of this year, the amount of properties transacted and the volume transacted is a lot less. If you compare that to the previous year, you will see that there is a drastic difference. One of the reasons I suspect is because the banks have tightened up their loans. And I hear that even though the official figures is higher, the amount of loans that's given out is very bad. So I assume that the rejection for properties will be also very high as a result. So while a lot of the property developers are saying that they've got high take-up rates, at the end of the day, you have to look at what is actually sold. So the market doesn't look very appealing for Q4, but on a brighter note, that means Q4 expect more discounts, more rebates. So home buyers who are planning to buy anyway, they might have a better chance of grabbing something of a better deal in Q4. But looking beyond that, for 2021, I think the market will still remain depressed. At the end of the day, it still depends on the borrower. So if the potential home buyer wants to buy a place, he just needs to make sure that he or she needs to make sure that their finances are in place. So while they have rebates and discounts given by property developers, they must remember that there are a lot of other expenses they need to pay later on. So if they have the rebate, don't spend the rebate straight away. The amount that you receive, they should hang on to those for future expenses. But the market should look a bit better next year because COVID-19 was something that caught a lot of people unawares. But to me, I think COVID-19 also presents a lot of opportunities in that it created the opportune time for people to get online. So people become more aware because they spend more time at home. So they do a lot more reading. And if they do a lot more reading, they are actually increasing their intellect on property, which is good. Because in the past, there were a lot of young property buyers who got themselves into trouble. So now we have this time period where COVID forced everybody to do more reading, to do more research. And then they are also more fearful because they don't know whether they're going to lose their jobs or not, whether the economy is going to remain good or not. So if they are able to do that kind of research for themselves, then they put themselves on the better platform to actually buy property later on. And that those kind of people who have done their homework, done the due diligence, they are in a much better off position to buy property.
Wow, you've actually opened up a huge myriad of questions that would be so relevant to just tag on to. But I just want to bring you back towards the Q2 numbers that you were mentioning a moment ago. In what you said just now, that the Q2 numbers were quite low. When you take the H1 numbers and you minus the Q1 numbers, and the balance will be Q2. Could one argue that the main reason why the Q2 numbers look so low is because during the announcement of the MCO that was smack during March, April, May, June, people couldn't go out. People couldn't go even take a look at properties. Would you be able to attribute that the low numbers is more in terms of the inability for buyers who were very qualified at a point in time to even go and see potential purchasing targets or what to purchase just because they just couldn't move? Would that be probably the reason rather than it was probably due to economics per se? What's your thought?
I believe that's more towards the signing of the S&P because the banks make it rigid. The government regulations make it such that you have to do the official signing. You cannot do that online. So the bank loan portion and the signing of the S&P, yes, I see that as a reason why the numbers might be low. But it was not, even during the MCO period, it was not impossible for people to sign on or do bookings for their properties. So I think, yes, I think the Q2 figures would have been affected by the MCO period, but we will know for sure when we look at the Q3 period. That will give us a better indication. But I suspect the Q3 period will still be fairly low.
One of the things that is going to be quite interesting to take a look at is for those that, when you mentioned the volume is lower and the volumes transacted are also lower for the Q2 period, and then what we are guesstimating what's going to happen for the Q3 period, do you see a certain type of property type and property price range that is either holding or is improving in terms of take-up rate compared to the market in general?
For the kind of property that is actually selling right now are the more affordable type, not in the sense of below 300, but between 300 and 500,000, more in the region around 350 to 450. I think that is I believe that's the property type that seems to be shifting. The reason why the under 300,000 property doesn't seem to be moving is because I suspect the properties are not built to the location that buyers would want to buy. The problem is that a lot of these kind of property tend to be built into areas where, one, too far away. Because if you look at some survey findings, the maximum distance that people are willing to travel on average is around 7 to 8 kilometers. So half the problem is that a lot of these affordable homes, really affordable homes, are unfortunately too far away from where the people want to buy. So while they're building a lot of these affordable homes, which is good, the problem is logistics, travel time, whether it's close enough to public transportation or not. Because we must remember that the poorer B40 tend to use more buses. The M40 are the one that use MRT, LRT. The top 20, even if you build next to the MRT station, chances are they have their own drivers because they can afford it, or they have their own vehicles. So for them, being close to MRT is not really, they see it as an investment, but they don't see it for their own homestay kind of thing. For the B40 who are normally the ones who are buying 300,000 and below, the problem is that it's just too far away, or maybe it's in a location that is not enticing to them, or it's not, they're not doing they should do the research to find out what these people actually want before they start building. So I think there is the lack of research on the pathway they are building all these truly affordable homes, which is a bit sad. So if you look at the figures from NAPIC, you find that the strangely enough, the affordable homes are the ones that's building up in overhang.
With the change in how people work due to COVID and also due to the fact that work from home now is the clarion call for a lot of companies per se, do you see this problem being overcome by people just choosing to work from home, or people having to work from home instead of coming all the way to the offices?
Well, like I said, it's an opportunity for this kind of situation. It created an opening for developers to look into, because if you notice that, I mean, like, for example, my place, you see the background isn't exactly that great for work from home situation where we have to do conference. So a lot of the people who are now forced to work from home are realizing that, hey, we need a home office. So I suspect that would be if they do enough research, I think this could be a way forward. The COVID-19 create an environment where we need the home office. Whereas before, if you look at properties where they used to provide a study or a potential space for home office, people are like, oh, it's too small, we can turn into the bedroom, we're not really interested in that. But now people are like going, hey, we need a home office. So that inadvertently creates new demand. So it's a positive thing. So I understand that, yeah, the economy isn't that great, so people are holding back. But for developers, they need to look into post-COVID. They have to find out from what kind of things has affected residents for a property that would not affect them as much if they were to go into another situation where COVID-19 will happen again. So we see a lot of social distancing. We see a lot of facilities in condominiums and service apartments where they have to close certain facilities off to ensure that people adhere to the social distancing. So now, going forward, what can developers do in this kind of situation? Because social distancing, I'm sorry to say, this is going to become a common thing for Malaysia already. We never used to wear masks out in the streets, but now it's a common feature. And going forward, even once the COVID-19 has gone past and they found vaccine for the virus, I think the mask will still be sticking around, because the environment's like that. You don't know what's going to come next. We see one of the interesting things that we noticed in Korea was that the spread of COVID was not as extensive. Why? It's because Koreans themselves already has this culture of wearing masks. So the spread is not that extensive. Whereas in other countries like America, for example, they're so used to talking to people so much, and then they out there, they socialize like anything. And you see the spread in America is so bad. And as a result, it's a lot of things is due to mentality. So yeah, going forward, I think the property industry will still be a major player. The ones who have deep pockets now are the ones who will truly benefit.
When you say deep pockets, you're talking about the developers or the buyers per se?
Buyers. The developers, they will continue to develop regardless. The developers with the deep pockets are the ones who will last. The smaller players are the ones who are in danger, because if they cannot find sufficient buyers for their property, then the investment amount that they have pushed in is quite strained. Whereas for the bigger developers who have got big pockets, deep pockets, they can last through. So they can afford to tweak their future developments. Whereas those smaller players, when they build one or two property development, the ability to tweak their property is limited. So they can only do so much to attract future buyers. Whereas the ones with the deep pocket, they can do a lot of innovative. They can introduce new things into their property that will entice the property buyers. I mean, like, not the name developers, but I noticed that some have gone into creating special rooms to take in mail orders. So when you have parcels coming in, they've got special lockers that they put them into so that the residents can come down and collect their parcels, rather than having to come down and face the couriers themselves, which is exposure. So when they create a parcel room like that, the courier will come in, they will key in a password into the locker, put the parcel in, close it up, tell the resident, hey, your parcel is here, and they just come down and collect. So the amount of interactions that can be that can spread COVID-19 is reduced. So you see a lot of innovative developments coming in with a lot of things where developers have thought of what to do for people that can help them in such times.
Do you therefore see the facilities provided by the developers as a means to attract buyers to come? You know, we have X number of facilities, we have a Y number of outdoor, indoor things that you as an individual or you as a family or you all as a community can do within this development. That's why you should buy us. Do you find that the need for such facilities may also dwindle with the heightened awareness or the memory of COVID-19 past this period, where if something happens again, maybe these facilities will be out of bound, you cannot use, or maybe even a potential risk if I let my family or my kids go there and play as well or use it. So do you see this as a change in how the developers look at building strategy to attract new buyers to come in, because the old factors to attract may not be the factors that still can attract moving forward?
Yes, facilities will always attract buyers because they look at benefits to themselves, and they can see whatever savings they can do. I mean, like if there's a gym in the apartment, for example, that will save me money to enroll myself in a gym elsewhere, right? So that's savings. Normally most younger buyers, they'll see, oh, this kind of facilities, and that's what attracts them. But now we also see that they are getting more wary and they look at the maintenance fees. So if they were to buy into a property, they will think, oh yeah, it's great that we have this, but how much maintenance do we have to pay? So that, as you know, the more facilities you have, the more maintenance you're going to end up with. The maintenance fee is going to increase. So again, the COVID-19 created this environment where people start looking at, hey, do we really need those facilities? That is a question that a lot of home buyers should be asking themselves. What do you actually need? And yeah, while the facilities will still attract, at the end of the day, they have to think back to the COVID-19 situation. If I can't use the swimming pool, what is the use of the swimming pool if it's there? If the gym is closed, where can I still exercise? So yeah, you have a lot of problems which will arise, but it still boils down back to the developer, how they can get people to still use those facilities, but in a more standard procedure they need to introduce in. In the case of gym, like in my condo, they are now limiting the number of people in the gym to 5. So not more than 5 is 5 people, don't go in basically. They also allow people to open up the windows. Last time they used to close the windows and have the aircon running, but now they allow the people to open the windows, and it depends on whether they want in a more airy environment, which is possibly better, because when you coop it up within a aircon environment, the potential of COVID spreading is actually higher because you're cooping everything in. So you will see changes like this. Maybe limitation of number of people in the swimming pool. People become more aware that you have to shower first before you go into the swimming pool. So we already see this kind of behavior happening. And at the end of the day, the property buyer will still have to stop and think, hey, will we be using those facilities? Yeah, it's nice to have them. It sounds good, but why do you want to pay for facilities that nobody uses? There was one project that a lot of the residents complained during an AGM, which I actually sat in, and it was for a sauna. Nobody in the residence, the people who have moved in, nobody uses the sauna except one person. And they were questioning whether they want to keep the sauna or not, because the sauna, the maintenance fee was very high when they look at the figures for the JMB to whether they want to sustain the sauna or not. And that one resident said, no, I want to use it. So at the end of the day, like I said, developers need to find out whether or not the buyers are still keen for such facilities. Because if there's only going to be one user and the entire residents have to pay for this one user to use the sauna, sounds pretty unfair to me.
But the challenging part about it is that when it was first marketed, I guess everybody kind of sort of like more is merrier, when they probably didn't get to see how much cost is assigned towards the service maintenance charges per month after the RA takes over from the JMB. But at the same time, it's a bit difficult to also have a crystal ball to say that, which facilities would be of use later on, or more use later on, or less use later on as well. Because the consumers who stay there may not necessarily be the owners, but also could be the renters that the owners rent out to. So it's quite unique and quite different. Similarly, also for projects where short-term stay comes in, do you see investment into such properties working out moving forward? Should people still buy and invest in properties that can turn out to be short-term stay providing lodging solutions?
There was a recent case where it has come to light that the court has allowed for the JMBs and MCs to ban short stays within their project, regardless of whether it's residential or commercial. And that's the interesting part. Because normally for commercial, it should be allowed for such activities. But for reasons that the judge decided on, including the commercial side, is interesting. So investors who wants to look into providing Airbnb services to the public should be wary of this, because now the law has provided it that if they want to do short stay property, if the general, if all the residents are, if majority of residents are against it, and they can, during an AGM, they can actually lobby for the short stays to be banned within that particular property. So yeah, I think it will affect people who are looking at investments, because then this becomes a definitely case. This is a definite case for them to lose out if the AGM and the residents decided against Airbnb. So then they won't be able to do short-term stays anymore.
Well, this makes it very challenging for property investors to take a look at different ways of generating income to sustain the property or to make themselves passive income moving forward. If this is already caught and it has already been decided on, I'm not sure whether this has been appealed against, but I'm pretty sure that there'll be some party that will take this up to try and go to the Court of Appeal to say that, maybe it should only be applicable to residential properties and not commercial. But it's tough to say, it's difficult. But I think the central message that you're trying to share, Joseph, is if your only way out when you're investing property is to do short-term stay, you may want to look at different ways of monetizing other than short-term stay to just increase your opportunity for monetization so that you can comply with maybe the changing RAs over time in the building, unless you yourself take a very active role in the RA itself, and hopefully you can influence the other people who stay there. This is going to be quite interesting to see how this case plays out, and I think that it's still early days if there's not gone to the Court of Appeal yet.
True.
But Joseph, in the line that you're currently working with, and you talk to so many developers per se, development doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for ideas to turn into plans, to turn into submissions, and then approvals, and then groundbreaking per se. Do you see that the change in the buying profile, whereby jobs may not necessarily be full-time jobs moving forward, because the younger generation may then revert to gig economies, whereby incomes are sporadic or not on a fixed income basis, or people become their own employers? Do you see property prices coming down and therefore sizes coming down in the new renditions of what the developers are going to be offering the market moving forward, or to cater to these new buyers?
From what I can see is a lot of the developers are shifting to bigger units now. Interestingly enough, because in the past I used to look at studios, smaller units, cheaper prices, but in reality, it's not really cheaper prices, because if you look at the amount they pay per square feet is actually higher than the bigger unit. So you're actually paying higher even though it's a smaller unit. It's just that the end sum is lower. So does that mean that the property price is overvalued in that case? And I would say yes in that case, because if you look at the general environment, in a particular area, there's always a estimate price per square feet. So if you're looking at a smaller unit at the cheaper price, but if the per square feet is higher than the surrounding areas, then definitely it's overpriced. Again, going back to what I said, I noticed that a lot of the developers are actually looking into bigger units, and it seems to be a shift because, again, I suspect might be the result of COVID-19, that families who were apart, parents and their children who are staying in different locations, they start worrying about, hey, my parents, are they okay or not during the MC period? Are they getting enough food? If anything happens, what's going to happen? So they started shifting back with their parents, or they ship the parents to stay with them, so they can have the family unit suddenly became bigger again. So I think the developers are actually reacting to this in that what they're trying to do is they're actually creating more room and space inside their property. But if you notice, the prices are not as high as it used to be, especially during the 2012 period for the same property size. I think it's probably cost management in this case, but yeah, I think there'll be more interesting things coming up for property development in the next few quarters. Again, you mentioned that the property takes time to develop. A lot of the property developments are already reacting to this, and you can see that there's one in particular. They're looking in community. Actually, not one particular. There's three in particular. As far as I noticed, are looking into property community meeting. Sorry, community building. And for these developments, they're actually hiring a community manager, which is something interesting. In the past, we see a lot of properties introducing concierge services for the higher end projects, where the concierge will provide additional services to the residents. But in this case, it's different. They are planning to hire community managers to build communities, to create an environment where it's very family oriented and very muhibah kind of situation. And as I said, I come across three already, but going forward, it seems to be the case. So if they create this kind of property development, I've also noticed that the property size of the apartments are actually bigger. So that's an interesting direction that we seem to be headed. I'm not sure whether this is going to be a niche development, niche market for future developments. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of interesting developments that come out as a result of developers thinking ahead. Hey, in the future, what's going to happen? Do they want to do this? Which direction they're going for? The number of facilities I've noticed is dropping, and they're looking into facilities that can create more community bonding instead.
Oh, very interesting insights that you've gleaned from your work servicing developers, agents, and the community or buyers that come to your company's website. It also gives me what you shared with me gave me a little bit of insight as well with regard to probably multi-generational living coming together to also defray costs in terms of either partial mortgage repayment or even taking care of the children. If the kids go out to work, then the grandparents are there to take care of the kids or the grandkids in order for the cost to be defrayed and be used to buy a slightly bigger space. I know that when you mentioned just now, the PSF or smaller units may be high, but on an absolute term, the smaller units will be cheaper compared to a bigger unit. But on a PSF basis, the smaller units will have a higher cost. That one I understand. But the absolute term of the price point may be high enough whereby it may take more than two incomes to supplement it or higher deposit so that you have a lower installment on a monthly basis to sustain. So I also love the insight when you said that, people are becoming more aware that they look at facilities that actually matter and facilities to create community and community bonding activities. And that's a very interesting shift when people have to hire community managers for that. Usually I only see this in co-working spaces, and I've only heard about this for co-living spaces overseas. So this is going to be quite interesting to see how this thing plays out, especially when Malaysia is so multiracial, so multi-diverse, and it's going to be quite an interesting interplay moving forward. Joseph, I just want to draw your attention very quickly in our closing moments. Maybe one of the questions I want to touch on is, where do you see the market for office and commercial space? I mean, do you have any insight towards that moving forward?
Office spaces, that one is a very dicey thing at the moment, considering the amount of glut for the offices. From my apartment, I can actually see PNB 118 coming up very nicely. once it's completed, there's going to create more offices for the market. But the problem is a lot of the offices are closing at this moment in time. So looking forward, I would probably advise developers not to build more offices because that could be detrimental to them. Also detrimental to the market, because when you have too many offices, then the leasing price that you can put out, the rental use that you're going to get is going to be much definitely lower, and it's going to be super competitive. So unless they have somebody already in mind that before they build the building, they've got potential clients already coming aboard, then that might be a different matter. But to build offices blindly now, I think that would be definitely asking for trouble. For the commercial side, for retails, shopping malls, I think over the last few years, shopping malls already facing a lot of problems. As we know, the SS2 mall closed down several years back. And then we can see a lot of shopping malls that are actually struggling. A lot of the spaces are not utilized yet, even though they have been in the market for several years. The ones that are obviously doing well are the big names, Mid Valley, One Utama, Pavilion. You see the shops are still occupied, but there is also with the COVID-19 that created a lot of issues, because then shoppers can't really shop as they please in the past. Now there's a lot of SOPs. They have to sign in before they go in, their temperature checks. And then, of course, there is the recent scare of several COVID cases being detected in shopping malls. Shopping mall side, I'm pleased to note that they are willing to actually shut down their operation and do a deep cleansing, or if they notice something, they'll start progressing to ensure that it doesn't spread further. So I think One Utama did the very brave move by closing their shopping mall for several days in order to clean up everything before they reopen for the public. That's good because there's public safety involved, and that, to me, I think that creates more confidence in the management of that particular shopping mall, for example. It's impossible to control such a virus that spreads so easily. The only thing that I can say about COVID-19 is that the death toll for COVID-19 is not as great as influenza. But COVID-19 shows one thing very clearly, is that it spreads so easily. You never know how quick it can actually just pick up, as we noticed over the last few days when the numbers spiked again. But yeah, I think prevention is better than cure, not much choice. Yeah, you have to do the necessities to ensure your own safety. So basically, stay healthy, make sure you take your vitamin C, make sure there's zinc involved, right? Those are the things that people have to do nowadays.
Okay. Well, Joseph, I also wanted our listeners and our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm going to ask you a series of very quick questions, and I just want you to answer very quickly what comes to your mind. First one is freehold or leasehold?
Freehold.
Landed or strata?
Landed.
Urban or rural?
Oh, by the way, landed or strata? Landed can also be strata, right?
Absolutely, but landed.
But if you ask me whether strata or non-strata, I would say non-strata.
Non-strata, okay. How about rural or urban?
I am a city boy, so I have to say urban.
If you were to go into a stratified condo, high floor, mid floor, low floor?
Definitely high floor. Lots of advantages. One is that definitely better view. Number two is the loan doesn't hit you until much later. So the bank cannot charge you interest if you're servicing the interest until it reaches your floor. So they cannot charge you for something that's still in the air. So until it reaches your floor, then you find that the amount of interest that you're paying is actually lower. So I'll say, yeah, high floor.
And lastly, are you an investor yourself?
Yes, I am. I bought my second property. Should be coming. It's 3 years ago. Will I buy more properties? Yes, definitely. Am I looking around during this COVID time period to look for another property? Definitely, because when it comes to, people always say you buy low, sell high, right? I mean, for stocks. For property, it's obvious. Times like this, you get better deals. So yeah, if you can afford to buy a property or planning to buy a property, definitely now is the time to actually bargain shop lah. The problem with a lot of youngsters or the new buyers is that they have this waiting period. They think, wait, now I get better deal. The problem is that the deals will come and go, and the problem is once the time period is over, it's gone, and you miss your opportunity. So if you can afford to buy now, and don't think of, no, the price is going to come down some more. Yeah, you cannot think that, because with property, it's always a long-term game. So if you're looking to buy, expecting the property to drop down some more before you buy, how much lower are you waiting? And then do you think, well, if it drops down to much, much lower than the price you want to pay, when you reach that stage, wouldn't you still think, well, it dropped down some more before I buy? So you might miss the boat. So even if you buy now and the price drop down some more, you have to think property is a long-term investment. So you don't look into it like 1 or 2 years, then I'll make my money. Yeah, that is flipping. That's not investment. That is a technical gamble.
Very, very interesting insights, Joseph, and I'm sure it's gleaned from the many years you've been exposed into this industry and talking to every party possible, including investors, flippers, and even first-time home buyers per se. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a presentation by Fireside Chat, and we really thank Joseph today for sharing his cumulative knowledge on where the market is going to be headed in 2021. And I think the central conclusion I can grasp is that don't wait to buy and then wait. And
True.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next round of the Fireside Chat.
Thank you, Ernest.
Cheers.
See you.